will enable the county governments deal with the pending bills that has seen suppliers or contractors failing to get payment on time. But this particular bill that proposes an interest to be calculated or to be deducted from the amount that was stipulated to be paid, or rather the county governments will be incurring interest on a lateness or delay in doing their payments, then perhaps that will be able to encourage various government entities as well as the county governments to be able to pay suppliers and even those who have given out the goods as well as works rendered to be paid on time. That is a bill that is due for division at the Senate this afternoon, and of course we are likely to see that members perhaps will be supporting it from the debate that took place in the House in the previous sittings. The Senator for Nandi, Honorable Samson Cherargei, is this afternoon scheduled to table the County Government's Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 25 of 2023. This bill is at its first reading stage, and it is a bill that is lined up to be read for the first time on the floor of the Senate this afternoon. And the bill proposes to enhance the voting threshold in a county assembly for the removal of a member of a county executive committee. The members of a county executive committee are appointed to head various dockets in the county executive, charged with discharging of devolved functions. And the bill therefore affects the powers and functions of the county governments, and it is therefore a bill that concerns counties. So this is a bill that is set to be read for the first time on the floor of the House. It is a bill by the Honourable Member, Senator Samson Cherargei, and it is lined up to be read for the first time. The bill proposes to enhance the threshold of voting in a county assembly for the removal of a member of a county executive committee. This is a bill that is lined up to be considered on the floor of the Senate this afternoon. Members of the Senate will also be considering a motion on the adoption of the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the county government's equitable share cash disbursement schedule for the financial year 2023-2024 and approval of the county government's cash disbursement equitable share schedule for the financial year 2023. This is a motion whose debate already kicked off on the floor of the Senate chambers, but was interrupted on the Wednesday of 2nd August, the year 2023 in the afternoon sitting. And this committee seeks to have the House approve the county government's equitable share cash disbursement schedule for the financial year 2023-2024. The Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Amason Jeffa Kingi, is in the chambers. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast that is brought to you by PBU in partnership with KBC. Good afternoon.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with abundant favor and blessings us, your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you've committed to our charge. Amen. Clerk, do we have quorum? Pardon? We do have quorum, so kindly proceed to call the first order.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Honorable Senator Okio Okoit Andrew Omtata. Any senator holding brief for the Honorable Senator? This is the second time, Secretariat, this is the second time this petition is coming up. When it came up, was it yesterday? I dropped it and I've not received any letter seeking to have it reinstated. How did it find itself back to the order paper? Okay. So that petition stands dropped. Now, Honorable Senators, I have the following petition to present. Honorable Senators, I hereby report that a petition has been submitted to the Senate by Marungu residents within Mugange, Mwanda Ward in Taita Taveta County, concerning impending eviction from the ancestral land by Holy Rosary Catholic Parish, Mwanda. As you're aware, under Article 1191 of the Constitution, and I quote, every person has the right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including enacting, amending, or repealing any legislation. Honorable Senators, the silent issues raised in this petition are as follows. A, that the petitioners have resided and established a livelihood in Marungu area within Mugange Mwanda Ward in Taita Taveta County for the last 4 decades. B, that in 2007, the Holy Rosary Catholic Church approached the elders of Marungu area and persuaded them to allocate them a piece of land to enable them put up a structure to be used as a church and an orphanage. The community elders identified 75 acres for allocation to the church. C, that on the date of the site identification, the Marungu area elders, Senator Methu, consult in Lawtons. That on the date of site identification, the Marungu area elders were accompanied by the area chief and sub-chief, when the chief directed that the church be allocated 1,000 acres instead of the 75 acres that the community had identified. That due to the differences between the area chief and the Marungu area elders on the acreage to be allocated for the Holy Rosary Catholic Church at a meeting held in 2007, the exercise was not concluded, and since then a meeting to allocate the church the piece of land has never been held. That in the year 2019, the mission constructed a church in the area they were to be allocated, and further sank a borehole in the year 2021. F, that in 2023, the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development set up an adjudication scheme known as Ngoloki Adjudication Scheme, covering Marungu area. The adjudication scheme did not adjudicate on approximately 1,000 acres in the area for reasons that it belongs to the Holy Rosary Catholic Church Mission and that the land had been adjudicated. G, that the decision to allocate the church 1,000 acres was made without involving the residents of Marungu area and that the initial occupants of the said land are facing eviction. That the petitioners have made efforts to have this matter addressed by relevant authorities, in this case, the National Lands Commission, which has failed to give a response to their concerns. The petitioners, therefore, pray that the Senate intervenes in this matter with a view of establishing the rightful owner of the 1,000 acres of land in Marungu and recommend that ownership of the land be reverted to the community. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 237, I will allow comments, observation, clarification in regard to this petition for not more than 30 minutes. Senator Wambua.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to take the first bite on this petition from Taita Taveta. Mr. Speaker, Taita Taveta County is a neighbor to the lower eastern region counties of Kitui, Machakos, and Makueni. And for that reason, Mr. Speaker, we have a lot of people from my community who are settled in Taita Taveta. I want to say two things about this petition, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ideally, when people are being evicted or uprooted from their land that they own, they run to the church for refuge. But Mr. Speaker, is a situation where we are dealing with a very complicated matter where a church has been invited to community land, and as per this petition, the church now wants to evict the same people that have ousted them on their land. Mr. Speaker, I pray that this petition finds serious consideration in the Committee of Lands. But Mr. Speaker, as this matter is also being looked into, I would want to invite the committee to look at several other land cases, especially in Makueni and in Kitui, for residents who have forcibly
Honourable Senator, there is a lot of movement in the chamber. Kindly take your seats.
The Speaker, Senator Cheragai, is not heeding to the call of the Speaker to take his seat.
Senator Chirangai, kindly proceed to your seat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was saying that this committee should extend their investigation to a land matter in Makueni and Kitui counties on the eviction, I'll call it eviction, of residents from Athi, from Kibwezi to Athi to Ikudha, Mutomo, Kitui, Kabati, Migwani. People's land has been taken to pave way for the construction of a superhighway. And the compensation to those people, Mr. Speaker, to date has not happened. So as the committee looks into this matter of the land in Taita Taveta, which is our neighbor, then the compensation for those people who have paved the way for the road construction should also be looked into. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cheriot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a strange petition. Strange in the sense that on many occasions, people run to the church and seek refuge there. What I'm reading about the Marungu residents in Mchange Mwanda ward in Taita Taveta County is a bit strange, because it's the church against the people, and the church and the people are supposed to be one and the same. And therefore, I want to call upon the department, or rather the committee in charge of lands, to keenly listen to the cries of these people. You know, Mr. Speaker, one of the campaign pledges of Kenya Kwanza is that there shall never be evictions as used to be the order of the day during the infamous handshake days, Mr. Speaker. You remember that even amidst COVID, many citizens used to be kicked out of their homes, and many such things used to happen. We said we must give dignity to even those that are least endowed economically amongst ourselves. And I believe that these citizens would not have looked up to the Senate if they were well established, if they had the connections to reach my good friend, the Senator of Kisumu, who would have put up a case for them, and many such things that other well-endowed citizens normally do. But they have looked up to the House of Representatives, which is the Senate, and I believe that in here they'll find justice. This is not to castigate the church, because I believe, you know, the book of Proverbs, Mr. Speaker, if you're a good reader of the Bible, tells you that when you listen to the first to speak in court, you'd think how evil the accused are until they too get a chance to speak. That is old ancient wisdom which I want to guide the Committee of Lands as they listen to this petition, because it will be important to understand from the Holy Rosary Catholic Church what exactly is their thinking, what is the nature of the dispute, did they pay for this land, and any such matters that may arise. And this is one such petition that sometimes, Mr. Speaker, you don't do justice to if you listen to it just here in the plenary. In the plenary, you get the documentation, but the public hearing and the establishment of facts, you ensure that you get onto your vehicles or whatever means of travel, drive all the way to Mwanda Ward in Taita Taveta, Mr. Speaker, and listen to those people so that you can find and establish the truth about what is it that they seek from this Senate. And I believe that in the long run, Mr. Speaker, justice will be served to them. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this chance.
Senator Professor Tom Ojenda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this petition. Clearly, the land question is a question that would commend listening to both parties, and especially where the church is involved, Mr. Speaker, sir. This is not a case, this is a case that would involve eviction within the law. That is one. But two, would also include considering questions of adverse possession and questions of ensuring that communities that have lived in church are able to get accommodation. And if acquisition is the way to go, land acquisition, then the body that does acquisition, the National Land Commission, would be involved within the framework of the Land Act 2012. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think, and why I support this petition, is that it is commonplace for communities to find themselves living in places, and, Mr. Speaker, sir, where in those places they live for a particular time, over 12 years, they claim rights, yet at the same time, those who claim ownership to those parcels of land also claim rights. So you have a conflict in ownership. Mr. Speaker, sir, of particular instance, and I want to cite this for the record. We have the land question in Kibos, almost similar to this question, of the Nubian community, a community that came to Kenya during independence, has lived in Kisumu County since independence, and only in 2021 was evicted from the land parcel that they occupy, and are now living as squatters in a place they have known as home since their birth. I will bring a similar petition which mirrors the same petition that we have today, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the land question in this country must be taken seriously. Land is not only an emotive issue, it is at the very center of life. And it is important that the agencies that deal with land take community problems and community complaints seriously. I pray, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this petition be committed and that the Land Committee, chaired by my friend Senator Methu, ensure that this petition is treated with the seriousness it deserves. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have another problem, a parcel of land neighboring the airport in Kisumu County, where the community has the question of ownership, and they've kept complaining over whether who time is up. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Mungatana.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipa nafasi hii kutoa mawazo yangu kuhusu petition hii ambayo iko mbele yako. Bwana Spika, swala la ardhi sehemu ya pwani imekuwa donda sugu kwa wakazi wa pwani. Na kati ya ahadi ambazo serikali hii ya Rais Ruto ilichukua ni kwamba watalimaliza hili swala ama kupunguza shida za wananchi sehemu ya pwani. Na ukweli usemwe ni kwamba katika safari zake rais na mawaziri wake tumeona dalili ya swala hili kutatuliwa. Kwa hivyo ni jambo la kusikitisha sana kusikiza kwamba sehemu ya Mgange, Taita Taveta County, ambapo wananchi wengi, bwana Spika, unajua wanakosa ardhi kwa sababu kuna mashamba makubwa ambayo yameshikiliwa na mabwenyenye. Bwana Spika, tunashangaa sana kusikia kwamba kanisa na wananchi wanakosana kuhusu ardhi yao ya tangu jadi. Kwa hivyo tunataka kamati ya ardhi kupitia mwenyekiti wao walichukulia kwa uzito hili swala, kwa sababu sehemu ya Pwani iko na rekodi mbaya kuhusu watu kunyang'anya watu wengine ambao ni wachochole, ambao hawana nguvu, wakanyang'anywa mashamba yao ama kukoseshwa haki zao za kiardhi. Kwa hivyo nasimama kusupport hii petition na ninaomba kamati hii itatue swala hili haraka sana. Na ningependa pia wakati kamati hii inaangalia hili swala, Bwana Spika, na waomba sana watembelee sehemu hiyo, kwa sababu sehemu ya Mgange, Bwana Spika, ni sehemu ya milima, na ukisikia mtu amechukua ekari 1000 sehemu za milima, basi wale wananchi pale walipobaki wamebaki na mahali pachache sana. Kwa hivyo tunaomba wafanye hii kazi wakiwa wametembelea sehemu za Mgange, wasiifanye Nairobi, wajionee wenyewe hali ya maisha ya wale wa Taita ambao wanaishi huko juu. Asante sana Bwana Spika.
Senator Dulo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to support this petition. Mr. Speaker, it looks like this is really an extraordinary petition, because you don't expect a community to fight with a church, because as others have said, people normally run to church for solutions, and this is really unfortunate, and the committee should seriously look into it. Number two, Mr. Speaker, whenever there is a compulsory acquisition or acquisition of land, it happens in community land. And I think this is a matter that we seriously need to look into it, because every Tom, Dick and Harry, they feel that they can go to the community land and take their land without even consulting them. I believe there is a legislation where the community and the relevant government institutions are on the ground. The community needs to be consulted. And actually, I have a similar situation where the road from Isiolo to Madogashe, the government has acquired land, and up to now, NLC, they have agreed to review the compensation figure, and they have not even done anything. I have brought a petition as a statement on the floor of this House, which up to now issues are not resolved. And I think the committee should seriously look into issues of compensation, and more specifically on community land, because where private land is involved, procedures are followed. But where community land is involved, nobody actually takes laws seriously in this country. And I support. I thank you.
Senator Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like those who have spoken before me, I note with great concern that Christians are petitioning against their own church. Mr. Speaker, I noticed the mention of the area chief and the mention of the community elders. Traditionally, elders' word has been preceding the word and the opinion of chiefs. But this particular chief, as the committee goes to the ground, he must be one of the usual, typical big man syndrome sort of chief that we get in the rural areas, who, after the community allowed the church to be given 75, Mr. Speaker, 75 acres for free, then wanted to punish the community by wanting that they give away 1,000 acres. Maybe, Mr. Speaker, who knows? Probably the chief wanted to use that excuse to then help other land grabbers who have nothing to do with the Catholic Church to soil the good name of the Catholic Church. Mr. Speaker, this brings into question 2 points. The first one is the alternative dispute resolution mechanisms that were being promoted by former Chief Justice David Maraga. Probably a matter like this is best sorted out by the elders through the usual traditional sittings. Number two, Mr. Speaker, it brings into the question the issue of the land tenure policy in this country. Our land tenure policy is not sustainable. We have to slowly start educating our youth to know that in the fullness of time, not every Kenyan will have a title deed. In fact, sometimes I normally ask myself, why would a doctor like myself, a lawyer like you, Mr. Speaker, a lawyer like Chireregei, be fighting for the father's 2 acres of land to subdivide with their siblings? What for? Even if it is 10 acres, Mr. Speaker, the money I make out of an operation of 30 minutes can enable me to do further investment, the money that Chireregei makes in court. You do not have to fight over your father's 10 acres of land. You don't have to fight over your father's 100 acres of land. You can actually live as a professional doctor, professional lawyer, professional what, without necessarily owning a title deed. This mindset must be removed so that we can now plant trees, afforestate our country. We leave people who are professional farmers to grow wheat, maize, and sugarcane for us when the rest of us earn our livings from our intellectual property. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Onyonka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to also support the discussion that my colleagues have had. The only thing I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, is that I think we need to have a different approach on how we are handling certain matters, including this issue of land. I think as our committee may be sitting down, and that's the Lands Committee, and my brother, Honorable Methu, is the chair, even when this might be a matter that the committee would want to handle in piecemeal form, because there are various matters known as land which are questionable and which have raised very pertinent issues. One of the small recommendations I would make, Mr. Speaker, is that I would want to discuss it with Honorable Methu if there is a possibility that we can actually come up with a discussion of setting up an ad hoc committee which will specifically be dealing with some of these matters of land, looking at the historical injustices, without necessarily going back to the Ndungu reports and all the reports that have come historically, because many of these issues, Mr. Speaker, are coming up, and there are so many from all counties and all areas. I think you've seen areas where you find, Mr. Speaker, when governors come in and they are sworn in, the first thing they do is beginning to go to people's land, whether the documentation was available or not. Some will say people who have this land are actually trying to steal the land, that it was not theirs, and all that kind of stuff. I think we need to create a semblance of order. And Mr. Speaker, one of the matters that I'm curiously watching the KK regime, and especially President William Ruto, is for us to have a system that is based on GPS spatial planning, where pieces of land and land which is owned in this country.
What is the point of order, Senator Boni?
Speaker, I raise understanding order number 105. Did you hear the Senator of Kisii call the administration of Kenya Kwanza, headed by President William Ruto, as a regime? Could he table evidence to demonstrate that the administration is actually a regime? What we have is the popularly...
Order, Senator. Senator Boni.
Yes.
Kindly take your seat. Senator Onyonka, proceed to conclude your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would want to thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think Bonnie must have had a very bad lunch today. And he says he did better than Honorable Speaker. Bonnie says he did better than Honorable Sifuna. I doubt.
Point of order.
With those few remarks, thank you, sir.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Just take your seat. The honourable
No,
member
the Speaker has not. You are not the Speaker. Stop shouting.
Senator Cherengei,
Relax,
Senator
stop.
Sifuna.
Yes.
Senator Sifuna, please.
Yes.
There is only one chair, and that chair is me. Senator Cherengei, proceed to make your comments on the petition.
Mr. Speaker, under the meaning of, as I make my comment, under the meaning of the dictionary, regime means an authoritarian regime, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, however much you shout, this is not a marketplace. You must listen to what I'm saying.
Order members. Senator Cherengei, I gave you the floor to
I'm proceeding, Mr. Speaker.
comment on the petition.
I'm commenting.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, the government we have in place is God-chosen. And it is a government that is not a regime. Regime is a wrong denotation of what the regime means. It is authoritarian. Mr. Speaker, in what I wanted to say on the aspect
order members. Order.
On the aspect
Senators, kindly allow the senator to make his comments on the petition as presented by the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that protection. Mr. Speaker, what I want to say is that I agree that the issue of land is an emotive issue. And my law lecturer, Professor Tom Ojenda, will tell you in the book of conveyancing that land is an emotive issue, Mr. Speaker, because Professor Tom Ojenda, who taught me land law and conveyancing, wrote extensively about conveyancing matters in this country. Mr. Speaker, and he begins that land is an emotive issue. Every African, Mr. Speaker, especially from where I come from, if you do not have land, you are nobody. You are not a man. Apart from other qualifications, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage communities to use alternative dispute resolutions. And we have established a mediation center in this republic, Mr. Speaker, especially on land matters. I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, when you look at Kimasa's quarters in Kapsabet law courts, they have won a case against Africa Produce of 350 acres. They choose to use a judicial process, Mr. Speaker. One of the commitments of President William Ruto's government has been to ensure that no Kenyan should be evicted unlawfully. More so what we call infrastructural evictees, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge these communities, the church is part of the community is the church, Mr. Speaker, and therefore these prayers that has been put in place, Mr. Speaker, is very important. And the issue of land, Mr. Speaker, we need to be careful because there is a dangerous disease, Mr. Speaker, that continues to be a cancerous in this country. It is a disease called grabiosis. When you go, most of the road reserves have been grabbed, Mr. Speaker. Even when you drive all over, the people are built even next to the road reserve, Mr. Speaker. And yet when there is compulsory acquisition being done, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, the government ends up paying for its own land, which is public, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the committee led by my young brother and the last born of the Senate, Senator Medhu, Mr. Speaker, to ensure they look into the issue of public land, Mr. Speaker. And we must even, Mr. Speaker, look at some of the people who have grabbed public facilities, including Kisumu molasses plant, Mr. Speaker, the other areas that we have one around, Mr. Speaker, in Kisumu, next to the airport, Mr. Speaker, areas that we are having here in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, even the Senate and even the Parliament, Mr. Speaker, we must look at the title. And I want to urge, Mr. Speaker, that even the primary schools in this school, we had the famous Waraka Run scandal, Mr. Speaker. Allegedly, the former minister was mentioned widely, Mr. Speaker. We need these people to be arrested so that we don't see the issue of land historical injustices, Mr. Speaker. We want them to be arrested, Mr. Speaker, so that we can ensure we protect the sanctity of title deed, Mr. Speaker. Because we don't want to reduce title deed into a tissue paper in this republic, where you are given a title, before you know it, there are many people who have title, Mr. Speaker. And that will be, I know, Mr. Speaker, where you come from. And you have been the governor of Kilifi County, Mr. Speaker, and the Speaker of this House. The issue of land historical injustices, Mr. Speaker, must and should be looked, because I know it affects the coastal area, Mr. Speaker. But I'm happy that being you part of the Speaker of this House and being a leader, Mr. Speaker, you have opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that issues of land historical injustice, not only in Nandi, Mr. Speaker. Finally, we have the issue of Talai land historical injustices. But when you go to Kericho, Mr. Speaker, and I normally say in this House, for the people who use choppers or sky team, as they call themselves, when you fly over Kericho and Bomet and Nandi, you think we are living in Canaan. We are not. Those tea plantations are stained with the blood, Mr. Speaker. The owners are drinking tea somewhere in London, Mr. Speaker, but we are suffering down there, Mr. Speaker. That matter must be put into, even here in Kiambu, Del Monte, Mr. Speaker, they must look at it, Mr. Speaker, because the great people of Kiambu have never benefited. The issue of land must be faced head on, Mr. Speaker. And I know that there are names there are names who are mentioned when people share them, Mr. Speaker, and they are part of the people who have grabbed land in this republic. They must be prosecuted, they must be arrested, Mr. Speaker. With those very many remarks, I support this petition.
Honorable Senators, we have expanded the time allowable for comments and in this petition. Before I call the chairperson for education, allow me to make the following communication. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon, visiting teachers and students from Teresia Schools, Gilgil, Nakuru County. The group comprises 4 teachers and 28 students who are in the Senate for a one-day academic exposition. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Also, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon, visiting teachers and students from Milimani Primary School, Nairobi County. The group comprises 5 teachers and 229 students who are in the Senate for a one-day academic exposition. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Lastly, in the public gallery, we have 5 students, accompanied by 3 teachers from Sabis International School, Nairobi County, who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I will allow the Senator for Nairobi, on behalf of the Senate, to, under 1 minute, to welcome the 3 delegations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to welcome the students from the 3 schools, the 2 schools from Nairobi and the 1 from Nakuru. On behalf of my colleague, the Senator for Nakuru, who is not in here, I want to welcome all of you to the Senate this afternoon. I'm hoping that you will get opportunity to learn 1 or 2 things during your tour. Mr. Speaker, just this morning I was at the Moi Forces Academy, where all the primary schools in Nairobi are having games there as we wait for them to proceed to the nationals in Kisumu. And I want to encourage these young people who are here this afternoon to work as hard as they can during their time in school, to listen to their teachers, their directive of the teachers and their parents, and to shoot for the sky. I don't think that in the current times that we live in, there is anything that is beyond anyone if you put your mind to it. So on behalf of the Speaker, the Senate, my colleague, the Senator for Nakuru, is not here, I welcome you and I wish you a fruitful visit. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Chairperson Standing Committee on Education to present the report. Now, Senator Mazayo, you know you cannot stand on a point of order on the issues shared with me unless you have a different matter. However, honorable senators, you will recall that sometimes last week, the minority leader rose to seek for a statement on the security of the senators on the minority side pursuant to the withdrawal of their security. Now, that matter is urgent, and I want to implore upon the relevant committee, that is the Defense, Security and Foreign Relations Committee, to expedite in bringing that statement to the floor of the House. At any rate, directing that we get a progress report before we proceed for recess next week. It is so directed. Proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. A petition report. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following petition report on the table of the Senate today on 3rd August 2023. The report of the Standing Committee on Education on the petition concerning payment of pension to teachers who retired between 1997 to 2007. The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Education. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me just summarize the issues under this petition. Just on issues concerning this petition is a matter concerning teachers who retired between the year 1997 to 2007. And I want to thank the committee, particularly and the petitioner who brought this matter before the committee, Mr. Philip Kato. And as a committee, we deliberated on the issue, involve all the stakeholders, particularly the Kenya National Union of Teachers, NAT, the Kenya Union of Primary Education Teachers, KUPPET, the Retired Benefit Authority, RBA, the Chief Executive Officer of TSC, and the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Economic Planning. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee deliberated on the matter, and out of the claims of teachers who had a problem of not being paid their arrears and their pensions, the number of 23,487 teachers whom they had a problem on their payment of their pension, we engaged the stakeholders, and later we engaged the Ministry of National Treasury, whom just the other week came to the committee and confirmed that they have paid quite a substantive number of teachers this pension, and the rest 1,300 teachers whom they are yet to pay, they confirmed that within three months the deductions, the payment, the arrears will be paid. So I want to lay this report to the floor of the House as a concluded report by the committee. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
The Majority Leader. Senator Chirang'e, you know you can only raise on a point of order if another senator is on the floor and contributing. No, just have a seat, Senator.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, 3rd August 2023. 1. The Gabari Springs Catchment Protection Area Order Legal Notice number 104 of 2023. 2. The Kajulu Hills Catchment Protection Area Order Legal Notice number 105 of 2023. 3. The Manguo Swamp Groundwater Conservation Area Order Legal Notice number 106 of 2023. And 4. The Marura Ewaso Narok Swamp Catchment Protection Area Order Legal Notice number 107 of 2023. I beg to lay. Thank you.
Next order, clerk.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
Now, honorable senators, before we prosecute that order, I'd wish to, pursuant to Standing Order 45-2, to move to rearrange the sequence of today's order paper. Honorable senators, if you look at today's order paper, the order number 9 and 11 are very urgent. We need to pass this motion. We also need to push the order number 11 to division so that we can be able to undertake division on it next week before we proceed on recess. I will therefore be seeking that we move straight away to conclude debate on order number 9. We conclude debate on order number 11 so that by next week we can move them to division before we break for our recess. After we are done prosecuting order number 9 and 11, we can then come back to questions and statements. But at least we will have moved these two orders to the level that we can be able to conclude on them next week. Clerk, kindly proceed in a manner. Before I allow the clerk to call the order as rearranged, allow me to make the following communication. Now, honorable senators, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, CPA, is an international organization that brings together parliamentarians from over 180 parliaments and legislatures of countries and territories and within the Commonwealth community. The association was established in 1911, making it one of the oldest and most significant parliamentary institutions in the world. The CPA main objectives are to promote parliamentary democracy, provide a platform for parliamentarians and parliamentary staff to exchange ideas and best practices, and foster cooperation among member countries. The association is committed to upholding the values of the Commonwealth, including democratic governance, respect of human rights, equality, and the rule of law. Honorable senators, the CPA Constitution provides for the establishment of branches, and the members of the legislature in which branch is formed are entitled to become members of the branch. Therefore, membership is open to all members of the Senate and the National Assembly on payment of the applicable subscription fee. The affairs of each branch are managed by the Executive Committee. Members of Parliament who wish to become members of the CPA are required to pay a subscription fee of 4,000 for life membership and Kenya shillings 1,000 for annual membership by completing a membership form. The membership form may be obtained from the office of the clerk. Honorable Senators, in accordance with the rules of CPA, Kenya branch, the branch is required to hold the annual general meeting to, among other things, hold elections of members of the executive committee. For this purpose, the joint presidents have convened a meeting scheduled for Thursday, 10th August 2023 at 10 a.m. in the National Assembly chamber. The elected members of the executive committee will have the responsibility of steering the branch towards achieving the objectives of the association. The executive committee members will be chosen based on their expertise and dedication to the principles of the association. It is essential to elect individuals who can represent the interests of Kenya and contribute meaningfully to the CPA's collective efforts in promoting democracy, good governance, and respect for human rights and the rule of law. The available slots are 12 to be shared on a 3-5 ratio between the Senate and the National Assembly. In this regard, 5 members will be drawn from the Senate and 7 will be drawn from the National Assembly. Interested members will be expected to be members of the association, and only duly registered members will be eligible to participate in the elections. Honorable Senators, I therefore take this opportunity to bring this matter to the attention of all senators and encourage senators to join, for those who haven't done so, and also to invite interested senators to tender their applications for the election to the Executive Committee through a written notification to the Office of the Clerk before Tuesday, 8th August 2023. I thank you, Honorable Senators.
Order number 9, motion, adoption of the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the county government's equitable share cash disbursement schedule for the financial year 23-24 and approval of the county government's cash disbursement equitable share schedule for the financial year 23-24.
Now, before debate was interrupted on Wednesday, Senator Muma was on the floor and she had a balance of 15 minutes. Adoption of the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the county government equitable share cash disbursement schedule for the financial year 2023-2024.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I had contributed to this report. I was midway through, and I was making the point that first I congratulated the government for the intention or the quick disbursement of all the funds to the counties, and I urged that in future we have funds meant for county governments to be disbursed on time, because we are all aware what the counties have suffered in the past few months. And secondly, I suggested, Mr. Speaker, that we need to remember that the function of oversight in Senate is a collective function that is served through the committees of the Senate, and I would urge that the committees be properly resourced, or Senate be properly resourced, in order for us to do meaningful oversight of implementation of county activities and county budgets. Mr. Speaker, it has been said in a few spaces by the President, by senators, even by some governors, that the presence of the Senate on the ground or machinani in terms of doing their job of oversight is very minimal. Mr. Speaker, as we finalized this financial year, most committees were not able to carry out all the activities they had scheduled because we were told there was no budget line to continue doing those activities. I would want, therefore, to request our commissioners on PSC to make case for the need for Senate to do its job properly. We cannot do our jobs properly if that oversight is merely dependent on what we do in these chambers. We should be able to move to the counties to be able to look at what is happening. The Committee on Devolution the other day went to Kajiado to actually look at a project on a market where petitioners had raised concern about it, and we have made recommendations that will actually be able to guide not just Kajiado County, but other counties on what we have seen. Mr. Speaker, we will need to do a bit more for us to be able to pick prudent and conformity with the rules of law and the Constitution in terms of implementation. We have seen governors use county monies on things like feeding programs in schools, which is a national government function. We have seen other governors trying to compete with members of parliament, trying to deploy funds that are required for county functions onto national government functions. And we have seen county government functions being ignored. Mr. Speaker, we will not pick this properly if we are not enabled to be able to scrutinize not just the CIDPs, but the kind of annual work plans that counties are making. For one to talk of a school feeding program, or for one to talk about a bursary fund, when the bursary funds, the CDF funds are awash on bursary matters, then we actually are not doing our job. Because everybody goes on a podium to thump their chests about what they are doing on wrong functions, and yet their own functions are not being carried out. So I would urge that the Senate be enabled to be able to carry out, to have the resource necessary in terms of operations in order for us to be able to scrutinize the annual plans, to scrutinize the implementation plans in order for us to be able to monitor the developments that are happening with these funds. I therefore support, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chirange.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this committee report by the Finance and Budget, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I want to thank the President, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, because when he was campaigning, he made a commitment that he will support the devolution, Mr. Speaker. I remember most of his competitors doubted that, but he has proved them wrong. Mr. Speaker, because historically, and Senator Stewart Matzayo is one of the oldest and ranking member of this House, apart from being minority leader, there is no time that counties have received their cash disbursement on time. Mr. Speaker, you being a former governor is well versed on this issue. Historically, and this has been the excuse where governors would go to funerals, would go to Arambes, especially my governor would say money has not been released. When Wananchi ask why are the roads bad, why are the drugs not there in Kapsabet County Referral Hospital, Kabiyet Referral County Sub-County Hospital, Mosoriat, or any part of Nandi, be it Tindred, Maraba Hospital, Mr. Speaker, the roads in Kapkulumben and Bokovala, among other areas, Mr. Speaker, the governor has always says the money has not been released. I'm happy with the comment that the president made while he was in Lamu. And he said he has released money to counties, and now it is the business of governors to deliver. I think the biggest elephant in the room, and we have considered, Mr. Speaker, even during Public Accounts Sitting Committee, including CPIC, where my brother, Senator Godfrey Otsosi is the chair, has been delayed cash disbursement by the National Treasury. Mr. Speaker, under Article 219 of the Constitution, it says the county share of revenue raised by the national government shall be transferred to the county without undue delay. Mr. Speaker, this is very important because if it is not released on time, it will affect the service delivery, Mr. Speaker. For example, Nandi, out of 7.3 billion, 05-294003 that will be dispersed in the financial year to Nandi County, financial year 2023-2024, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that my county has received in June 620,949,993. And in this month, Mr. Speaker, my county has received 584,423 and 523 has gone to Nandi County. In total, in 2 tranches, Mr. Speaker, Nandi County has received over 1.2 billion shillings in 2 months, Mr. Speaker. But when you go to ground, they say if you took a ground, it's different, Mr. Speaker. It is raining in Nandi, roads are not passable, there are no drugs, Mr. Speaker. I think we need to be serious and urge county governments, Mr. Speaker, that they need to do their job. This money is not money that belongs to the governor or county government. It belongs to the great people of Kenya and the great people of Nandi, Mr. Speaker. 1.2 billion in 2 months, Mr. Speaker. I think we need to agree as a committee, Mr. Speaker, that as a Senate we must be proactive, Mr. Speaker. When we walk around, Mr. Speaker, most of the time, wananchi ask us, what is Senate doing about plundering of resources? What is Senate doing that money can be used? Mr. Speaker, as a Senate, and I want to urge Senate Finance and Budget Committee to sometimes invoke Article 225, where counties have not used money in a transparent way, Mr. Speaker. I say there, and I don't fear to contradict myself, Mr. Speaker, that EACC is the biggest impediment in the fight against corruption in this country. When these issues are reported, especially pilferages of resources in counties, Mr. Speaker, EACC go and meet governors kwa nyuma ya tent, Mr. Speaker. And that is why, up to now, the fight against corruption in this country, Mr. Speaker, has been a joke, especially in county governments. Mr. Speaker, we have created 47 billionaires and millionaires because they are plundering the resources that is meant for counties, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask point number 2, Mr. Speaker, that the finance and budget, and as where Senator Roba is the chair, should look at a possibility of stopping the money under Article 225 that goes to counties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another point that I wanted to make, Mr. Speaker, is on the pending bill. Mr. Speaker, as we talk, why would it be? And counties have procurement plans, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the pending bills that you are talking about are less than 1 million. They are 500,000. They are 2 million, Mr. Speaker. These are poor Kenyans. These are young people. Their LPOs, Mr. Speaker, have been financed by banks through a loan, Mr. Speaker. Can you believe from 2013, Mr. Speaker, there are people in counties that are still being owed, Mr. Speaker, 500,000 up to date, Mr. Speaker. I think I agree that we need to pass the Prompt Payment Bill Act, Mr. Speaker, so that when you supply, there is a timeline of even 3 months for you to be paid, both by national and county governments, Mr. Speaker. Where do we get the pending bills? Mr. Speaker, it is interesting, as a Senate, and we must ourselves, we must prick our conscience. When you go to National Treasury, all money has been released to counties. But when you go on the ground, there are people still being owed by money. So where does this money go, Mr. Speaker? And that is why I say EACC has failed this country, Mr. Speaker, in the protection of devolution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another biggest challenge in counties, Mr. Speaker, number 4, is on the issue of incompleted projects, Mr. Speaker. Free advice, Mr. Speaker. Why would your predecessor find it hard to complete projects that you started, Mr. Speaker? Yet they know very well those projects do not belong to you, Mr. Speaker. It belongs to the great people of Kilifi, of Nandi County, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we talk today, there are many stalled projects from 2013, 2017, like the governor's office in Kapsabet town. And I know Senator Ochosi might have been, because that is his shortcut to Vihiga, might have seen that white elephant, Mr. Speaker. These are incompleted, Mr. Speaker. When you look at even CIDP, Mr. Speaker, like, for example, the flagship projects that have been marked for improvement, and sometimes, Mr. Speaker, some of us who are passionate for the success of devolution, we feel very bad. because we come here and pass money, but when we go on the ground, it is not reflected. Mr. Speaker, for example, in Nandi, I don't want to use any other county, we have a cooperative creameries in Kabiet, Mr. Speaker. It was supposed to be completed in 2021. No one, even the governor, when he appeared before CPAC, has ever told us what is the total value of Kabiet Creameries Limited, for example, Mr. Speaker. Even the Kapsapet Pediatric Wing, what is the total value of that project, Mr. Speaker? Even Kobuchai, expansion of Kobuchai dispensary, what is the total value, Mr. Speaker? Even Kapsengere, Mr. Speaker, expansion, what is the total value of that, Mr. Speaker? Even the expansion of Maraba, among other 196 health facilities, Mr. Speaker. Even Chepterwai, and I want to thank the President, Dr. William Ruto, because he supported the expansion of Chepterwai Nyayo Hospital in Masab sub-county, Mr. Speaker. Up to now, Mr. Speaker, no one can tell us the value. The projects have stalled. When you raise questions, Mr. Speaker, the farthest that the county government can go is to ensure that they hire blockers and other people to insult the senator in funerals and baby showers and other public forums, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a country, we must be honest and speak truth to the power, Mr. Speaker. We cannot be intimidated. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, on the floor of the House, I shall not be intimidated. I shall not be coward. I will not succumb to insults, Mr. Speaker, because I know the highest calling is the election by the great people, Mr. Speaker, of Nandi. So on the issue of CIDP, Mr. Speaker, we need to look at the CIDP, annual development plans, Mr. Speaker. County assets, Mr. Speaker, is one of the greatest challenges that we are facing, Mr. Speaker. When you look at the county assets, Mr. Speaker, I am shocked that most counties do not have a complete asset register as we talk today, Mr. Speaker. There are many assets that have been acquired, Mr. Speaker. For example, in Nandi, we have acquired a tractor to prepare silage, Mr. Speaker. And this is interlinked with the on-source revenue, Mr. Speaker, in the quick succession. Where is the assets? For example, let me use an example in Nandi. Mr. Speaker, we have an asset called Kiborko Tea Estate in Mgwen sub-county, Mr. Speaker. Up to now, out of 256 acres that Kiborko Tea Estate, Mr. Speaker, you know, for people who plant tea, including I had seen Senator Sigei and others, Mr. Speaker, you cannot tell me 256 acres can give you 15 million in a year through on-source revenue. So, Speaker, this asset should allow the county to generate the revenue, Mr. Speaker. To generate, Mr. Speaker, so that you can be able. Up to now, Kiborgo Tea Estate, the ownership, you have a title deed from one part. There is another part, Mr. Speaker. You cannot talk about the management, Mr. Speaker, management of the aspect of the management company that runs the Kiborgo Tea Estate to improve on the process, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on-source revenue, because it ties up with the assets, Mr. Speaker, should be able to generate money outside equitable shareable revenue, Mr. Speaker, including the conditional grants, Mr. Speaker, the donations and other additional funds as per the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. The on-source revenue is, you know, it shocks me. When counties pass finance bill, Mr. Speaker, they go for public participation. They start chasing Mama Mboga and Boda Boda to tax them. But, Mr. Speaker, when you go where Mama Mboga and Boda Boda stay, because they say kulipa ushuru ni kujitegemea, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, can you believe when it comes to collecting taxes from the Boda from Mama Mboga in Nandi County, you clobber them, Mr. Speaker. But when it comes to doing service for them, Mr. Speaker, for example, even in my local center, Mosoria Township, where I come from, where I was born and bred, Mosoria Township Center, Mr. Speaker. As we talk, our women in Mosoria Township Center are selling their mboga and other merchandise in open air, Mr. Speaker. But when it comes to collecting revenue, the county is quick. Go to Nandi Town, Mr. Speaker. Go to Kapsabet. In fact, the Kapsabet market is the worst of all, Mr. Speaker. Can you believe when you go to Kapsabet market, the headquarters of Nandi, Mr. Speaker, there is no toilet, there is no running water, There is no proper sanitation in Kapsabet, the town market, Mr. Speaker. Similarly to Maraba, similarly to Kaptumo, similarly to Kobuja, Mr. Speaker. We must, as a country, ensure when we collect, Mr. Speaker, the on-source revenue from the people. Mr. Speaker, when you go to Chemelil Chemase, Mr. Speaker, our border are staying in the sun, yet they pay, Mr. Speaker, for the border sticker. But there are no border shades. They have been forced to construct border shades using grass, Mr. Speaker. And yet, when it comes to collecting that money, Mr. Speaker, we use county enforcement as carries, harass Mamamboga and border, for example, in Nandi, Mr. Speaker, at the expense of providing service, Mr. Speaker. Because the clarion call of Kenya Revenue Authority, ni kulipa ushuru, ni kujitegemea. And that is what we are saying. Let it be pay tax, get service. Why would you pay tax and there is no service, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, it pains me. And I hope when we go to devolution, Mr. Speaker, I'll request the Committee of Trade to visit even Kapsabet Town Market, which is the headquarters, Mr. Speaker. I pity those women. Our women are very beautiful and hardworking in this country, Mr. Speaker. But when you go, there is no toilet, there is no water, there is no electricity. They cannot even, kujisitiri, how do you call it in English, Mr. Speaker? They don't even have dignity. I wish they could be motivated, Mr. Speaker, so that they work in a clean environment, they get water and electricity, so that when they are paying taxes, they dance and celebrate the way Kenyans are celebrating because of the Finance Act that the courts have allowed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we must be honest so that we motivate, Mr. Speaker. We must agree, Mr. Speaker, so that we can, and I can see minority side are very happy until they have gone to take tea, led by Senator Sifuna. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, let us be honest in this country. I saw even in Kingwal, our women roast maize, but they don't have shades. It is raining in Nandi. I don't know other areas. This is a rainy season, Mr. Speaker. Our women are forced to go daily to hospital. By the way, Mr. Speaker, what is funny about Nandi is this. You go and buy in Kapsabet Town Market. You are not sure of your hygiene. You get sick, you go to Kapsabet County Referral Hospital, there are no drugs. You go back and buy from the pharmacy, which are run by county staff. So, it shocks, it doesn't make sense. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, some of us are at pains. Because 190 in Nandi sometimes asking me, what is the role of devolution? Where is this money that you are bringing, Mr. Speaker? We must be held accountable at any given point, Mr. Speaker. I have seen even the NARIC, Mr. Speaker, the DANIDA, other organizations, Mr. Speaker, they give a lot of money to rural agriculture, Mr. Speaker. The county went and bought avocado seedlings, Mr. Speaker. And you give a farmer one avocado seedling, it doesn't make value, Mr. Speaker. The other, Mr. Speaker, they went and bought chicken and chicks. Chicken and chicks. What do you call, Mr. Speaker? Chicken and chicks. Vivaranga, chicken and chicks, Mr. Speaker. No, stop misleading me. I know Senator Eddie through you, Mr. Speaker.
Just proceed and stay focused. Stay focused and proceed and conclude.
I will stay focused, Mr. Speaker, as guided. My eyes is on the price. Mr. Speaker, that is why even NARIC, I want to ask Finance Committee, also provide us, we have passed a law on the issue of conditional grants, Mr. Speaker. You find counties are given NARIC, and Mr. Speaker, having been a former governor, you are well versed with these issues I'm raising, and I'm happy that you are a former governor and you understand. Counties are given money through NARIC, through World Bank. They decide and go and buy chicks. In some scenario, some counties went and bought fingerlets, fingerlings, They went and bought fingerlings, Mr. Speaker, and just throw it on a stream. How can you throw it on fingerlings on the stream and say this is a county project, Mr. Speaker? And we heard of a county somewhere in Mount Kenya East. I don't want to name the name of that county, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, because I can see my time is fast spent, I am happy that Nandi is getting 7.3 billion. But I am sad that that money will not translate to the value to the people of Nandi. Even 1.2 billion for June and August, there is nothing that is happening on the ground, Mr. Speaker. Even, Mr. Speaker, the national government gave us coolers that is meant to store our milk, Mr. Speaker. But up to now, those coolers have not gotten a proper housing where farmers can take milk, Mr. Speaker. And you know, as we thank the President, Mr. Speaker, and I'm going to ask the Agriculture Committee, led by Senator Murango, that the issue of reducing fertilizer is welcome, from 3,500 to 2,000 by the President, but it is a national government project. I want to ask Agriculture Committee, where is the role of Senate? Governors will go quickly, Mr. Speaker, on the ground and say to Mohalete and Bolea. What will senators say? What will the member of national? I want to ask Agriculture Committee to engage the Agriculture Ministry by ensuring that senators are part, because this is a national government budget, Mr. Speaker. And can you believe the only role that the county governments, Mr. Speaker, will provide is only on the role of logistics. But this budget will be financed only by the national government, Mr. Speaker, through payment of 2,500. I want to ask our Committee of Agriculture, please assist us so that wananchi, you know, all politics is local, Senator Eddy, all politics is local. The governors will go and say, we have brought fertilizer. Somebody will ask, what is the senator and member of National Assembly has brought? So we must, Mr. Speaker, we must be honest with ourselves, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank this committee. Thank you for the schedule. I hope this money will meet. And I want to conclude by saying, Mr. Speaker, we increased money that went to counties. In the last financial year, it was 370 billion. I want to thank President William Ruto. We increased to 385.3 billion. An additional to 15 billion, Mr. Speaker. With those very, very remarks, Mr. Speaker, allow me to rest there and congratulate and wish the committee well as they proceed and ensure that this money is dispersed. And I hope next week, Mr. Speaker, we shall be able to pass this cash disbursement schedule and be able so that wananchi will get opportunity of this service delivery. With those very, very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support.
Senator Chiranga, just approach the chair, please. I called the Honorable Senator because he had an assignment to do, and he was supposed to table a report, which I'm told he did. He's just informed me that he tabled the report. Senator Edwin Sifuna.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just let me get my notes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a new legislator in this House, this is the second report of the Finance and Budget Committee that I'm interacting with, after, of course, the report on division of revenue. Mr. Speaker, I have had lamentations of some of the senators who have spoken before me about the inadequacy of the resources that we've been sending to the county governments. But the country needs to know that we as a Senate had an opportunity to increase the resources that
Senator Perez, Tobacco, and Senator Essie. You can consult, yes, but not to disrupt the proceedings of the House.
Yes, we as a Senate had an opportunity to increase the resources that go to our county governments. As I look at this schedule, as a Senator of Nairobi, I can see, of course, that Nairobi has the highest allocation of about 20 billion shillings annually. I know from my calculations, Mr. Speaker, that if this House had agreed with the earlier report of the Finance Committee and voted for 407 billion shillings to our counties, Nairobi would be hitting almost 22 billion shillings. So, to hear lamentations from some of my colleagues who voted against 407 billion shillings, that just does not make sense for me. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to point to page 5 of that report. This particular schedule is stated by the committee to serve two things. First, by compliance with Article 219 of the Constitution, which expressly provides that the county's share of revenue raised by the national government shall be transferred to the county governments without undue delay and without deduction. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the schedule itself, it's not just about the amount of money that each county is getting. If you look at the top of that column, the first column at the top there, Mr. Speaker, there is a date that is provided for when these counties can expect that this money is going to be in their accounts. Mr. Speaker, county money, the money that counties expect under devolution, is not a favor. It is not a favor. It is a constitutional right. We Kenyans ourselves decided that we are going to have two levels of government and that we are going to finance both levels of government. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, what I usually say is that there should be no one who expects praise for doing what is the constitutional imperative. If sending money to the counties is a constitutional imperative, do not expect us to praise you for sending money to the counties. If you are doing a constitutional imperative, that is not something you have a choice in. Mr. Speaker, I have heard people here praising some quotas for saying, oh, money has been released to the counties. That is your job. That is the job of the executive, to ensure that our counties are financed on time. This schedule here, Mr. Speaker, once we pass the schedule, the people of Nairobi expect that by the 15th of July of this month and by the 15th of August next month, each of the counties will have received the monies that have been specified.
Senator Sifuna.
Yes,
the
Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chirange wishes to inform you.
I reject in total that offer. Mr. Speaker,
what is the point of order, Senator Boni?
Mr. Speaker, you've heard severally. I'm rising on standing order number 105. The Senator for Nairobi speak to a misleading statement that the amount which was allocated in Dora bill, there was no increment. Yes. Mr. Speaker, the second falsehood is alleging here is that there's a delay in the disbursement of funds. And yet, Mr. Speaker, as late as last week, there was no single county with an arrears. In fact, last week, Mr. Speaker, 32 billion shillings was disbursed. Is he in order to mislead the House, knowing that Dora, that we passed here, raised the money from 370 billion to 385.3 billion, and that all the arrears that had been accumulated by the handshake BBI government was cleared? Is he in order?
Senator Sifuna, kindly be factual in your comments.
Mr. Speaker, it is a fact that the 15 billion shillings additional that is going to the counties was passed not by the Senate, but by the National Assembly. In the Green Bill that came before this House, that money had been allocated by the National Assembly. We as a Senate did not add a single shilling. Our own committee, Mr. Speaker, I must be heard in silence. This cannot continue. This cannot continue.
Order, honorable senators. Order, honorable senators. If I hear the senator correctly, he said that the Senate did adopt the bill as it came from the National Assembly.
Correct.
And that is factual.
Yes. That is factual, Mr. Speaker. Can I proceed?
What is your point of order, Senator Boni?
Mr. Speaker, according to the Constitution of Kenya, the Dora bill cannot be signed into law without the concurrence of the two houses. Mr. Speaker, is the Senator for Nairobi in order to mislead the country that by us agreeing with the National Assembly, we were failing in our responsibility, and yet we were meeting the constitutional threshold that expects that for Dora to become law, it should need the concurrence of the two houses, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, in conclusion on this point of order, I'm tired and sick of new senators in this House giving the impression that we don't know what we are doing, we are not up to the task. We have worked, Mr. Speaker, and we want our constituents to appreciate us much. I don't earn a free salary.
Senator Boni. If I had Senator Sifuna make his comments, this is what he said. That the Senate adopted the figure as passed by the National Assembly. So there was concurrence of the figure between the two houses, which is factual. So I don't see why then there is a big problem there, Senator Boni. The two houses concurred that the figure to increase by the 15 billion from last year's allocation. Where is the problem here? Senator Sifuna, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want the conscience of all of us to eat us in our sleep and in our waking for the decisions that we take on this floor, Mr. Speaker. And I am happy and I will not tire to remind that, in fact, Mr. Speaker, there is a second limb to the facts that we have alluded to here, that our own committee on finance and budget, on the advice of the Commission of Revenue Allocation, did propose to this House that instead of the 385 given by the National Assembly, we as a Senate should go with the figure of 407. That is also a fact. That question of 407 or 385 was put to us as a Senate, as a House, as individual senators elected to get every single coin we can for our counties. 22 of my colleagues, whose conscience you can see is knowing at them, voted against 407 billion shillings. Let their conscience eat them until the day that I die. But you will not run away from a vote that you took. Nobody forced you to vote in that particular
What is the point of order, Senator Chirange? And as you raise your point of order, please.
Mr. Speaker, is it in order? I'm raising
Senator
under...
Chirange, I'm speaking.
Okay.
As you stand to raise your point of order, please use parliamentary language. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, is it in order? And I raise under Standing Order 105 and under Article 93 of the Constitution of Kenya, where it defines Parliament as National Assembly and Senate. Is it in order for Senator Sifuna to continue misleading Kenyans by now shifting goalposts between 407 and 370 billion, Mr. Speaker? Yet for us, who have been in this House long enough, note that it was an increment of 15.3 billion from 370 to 385.3 billion, Mr. Speaker. Is it in order, can Senator Sifuna confirm to the country that there was an increment to allocation to the counties through Dora Bill, Mr. Speaker?
Well, Senators, let us stop this hand-pecking exercise on these figures. The position is, as Parliament, Senator Eddy, this is the position. The bill that went to the President for assent is a bill of Parliament because it was processed in both houses. Yes. Yes. And upon being assented to, it became an act of Parliament. Yes. Meaning, yes, whatever increment of the monies as compared to last year is an effort, was a collective decision of both houses. That's why it's an act of Parliament. I don't know why we are still arguing on these very basic facts. Can you allow Senator Sifuna to conclude his comments in silence, please? And Senator Sifuna, be guided by the chair's observation on that particular matter.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I know is that I am required to comply with the standing orders in my debate. I have stated matters of fact. If those facts are things you are uncomfortable with, that is your own funeral. but I must state the facts as I know them. Mr. Speaker, let me proceed by saying...
Senator Sifuna, are you saying if the chair is uncomfortable with those facts, then the chair should...
No, I'm addressing you because I don't want to address the people who
Senator
are in
Sifuna,
discomfort.
just take to your comments, please.
Mr. Speaker...
Senator Chirange and Senator Boni, allow the senator to conclude his comments, please.
Mr. Speaker, if there is unparliamentary language that I have used, you need to point it out. I am just saying.
Senator Sifuna, indeed you've used unparliamentary language to the extent.
Which one?
To the extent that you've said for those who voted against, let the conscience eat. I think the Hansard will...
Mr. Speaker, that is not unparliamentary. That is linguistic gymnastics which I'm allowed to perform on this particular
I know exactly what you're saying. So going forward, Senator Sifuna, refrain from using unparliamentary language.
Mr. Speaker,
going forward.
I am going to find the most flowery language to describe what happened on this House. When the vote...
that e-citizen, which hosts government servers and documents, is actually banned by a private entity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've had the minister concerned with Interior visiting Shakahola in the last 3 months, almost every week, because of lapse in insecurity, that things happen in this country on the nose of our security agents and they just let them pass. Mr. Speaker, the queues at KICC didn't happen only yesterday. They've been there for 4 days in a row. You would ask what's happening there, no one would tell you what's happening there, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we as a House has a duty to protect our citizens. And that's why we must, Mr. Speaker, demand from the ministers concerned. Because even as this happened, there was information that was conflicting. One minister says, this is illegal, this is okay. Another one says, no, this is not okay. Mr. Speaker, we demand to know from the persons concerned that, one, how many people who are Kenyans have so far been scanned. So, Speaker, in Indonesia, an issue arose about WorldCoin. And you know what was said was that, one, they lie to you about getting your consent. Two, they lie to you about how much information they want to get from you. Number three, the Speaker, they basically steal the consent because, like it's been said today, a person who is hungry, a person who doesn't know what's happening in the world, a person whose only interest tomorrow is to get a packet of unga, is being told that you put your eyes here and 7,000 shillings comes to a Speaker. Where is our security agents? Where is the NIS? Where is the CID, Mr. Speaker? Before these kind of things happen, because as parliamentarians, we are not investigators. We don't investigate. We have set up institutions that are supposed to do this, Mr. Speaker, and therefore, I agree with those who are calling for, Mr. Speaker, a holistic review of what has happened so far, because I believe that even the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, Mr. Speaker, is complicit on this. So many guys are involved. The company registration offices, the Ministry of ICT, the Ministry of Interior, the persons involved in protecting our information, Speaker, must be questioned, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I end, I want to know from the two ministers, what remedial measures have they taken so far since this was discovered, apart from stopping this from happening? Have they confiscated their machines? Have they closed their offices? What have they done to ensure that, to assure members of this country that information they gave will not be used in a wrong manner? But, Mr. Speaker, finally, the ministers concerned, could they wake up and man up and run the ministries in the right way? Thank you.
Chematia.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I want to also take this opportunity to add my voice on this matter of WorldCoin. Mr. Speaker, the world today is technology and forever. First thing, we as a house, we need to realize that we might not be in a position to run away from technology. But again, I also want to concur with what Honorable Ochenga said, that this country is experiencing very unfortunate situations. Apart from the shakaolas we hear every day, apart from problems that people go through, you cannot imagine at 20 minutes that WorldCoin has been in this country for the last several months. They have been collecting this information of people, and it has not been reported. I still want to ask, what happened with NIS, which actually is fettered with a lot of public coffers? It is one of the departments that gets almost anything they want. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, today, we don't know exactly what the information that they have collected through HIRIS biometric is going to be used, and how many so far, whether we are able to recollect back, or whether you are going to confiscate even as you do your investigations, and who is using it, and for what purposes. I know if you keenly look at what this tech company does, is they do a lot of research. And Mr. Speaker, you might be walking around this world, and one day you are being picked in some corridors or in some airports, and you are being questioned or being arrested because your HIRIS or your HIRIS was picked and was used to mismatch on some other things. And this is an opportunity for this parliament to take up the challenge, call the minister specifically for Interior and the Department of National Security Intelligence. It is very unfortunate that we are here watching people queuing for several days, and no one could put a queue onto why and why are people these people are doing it. They were actually bragging all over Facebook that we are here and we are collecting these information, and it is unfortunate that the people who are giving this information and their HIRIS were young people, and they want to say they are poor people, but they are not poor people. These are people who probably they are just curious, but that curiosity could probably land them into a bigger problem in the future. As I say, as Honorable Mother have also put it across, that the owner of WorldCoin is also the owner of ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a very complex thing. You can imagine when you ask for an information and someone knows a lot of things about you, you'll also want to understand how they collected that information. As much as we are encouraging technology, these are some of the things that we are in fact, the departments of Interior must use a lot of resources to be able to understand what is happening in the world of tech. Mr. Speaker, I want to call upon the government of Kenya to take up this challenge and take possible ways to arrest the information that have been taken and give Kenya some very good information about this thing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I think we'll end there. Yes, Bensouda. 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. As a member of Communication, Information, I would like to, ICT that is, I would like to add my voice onto the WorldCoin issue. One, because much has been contributed towards this, in my opinion, I would like to advise that not only this House should call upon the Minister for Interior to come upon and explain, but we are talking about issues of data. I would also want to voice up that the two ministers, even the Minister for CII, should be called upon this House so that we can be explained for the security issues behind data which has been collected and how that is going to be managed. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, when I looked into the kind of the age that were queuing in line at KICC, most of them were youthful age. And even the way they dressed up, it meant that most of them even are youths who are even idle. When you looked at their code of dressing, you looked at their hair, there was a big problem. Number three, Honorable Speaker, when I heard the contribution of the Deputy Speaker, I want to support that the targeted areas, in my opinion, was also youths, because Strathmore is an institution which most of our youths in this country are learning. When we talk about Nairobi County, the same. So even the person who is behind the wild coin, this is not somebody who shall not pass park and go home. Questions and gaps are there. Why were they queuing? Who allowed them to occupy KICC, which is a serious government institution? I think we are threatened as a country, and so I agree with the President's information yesterday that some of our officers are very incompetent to an extent that he knows much of the things which happens in various ministries and others do not know. We are sleeping in our jobs. I fully support the President on this, and I want him to cascade seriously on the Interior Minister and the Minister for CII. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Mary Emase. I'll just give about two more. What is out of order, Honorable Ruku? Oh, hold on, Mary Emase.
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for the Minister of Interior, for Mheshimiwa Bensouda to purport that the Minister of Interior is sleeping on his job, when we know very well the Minister of Interior, the kind of job he has done to ensure we get rid of bandits in this country, to ensure the massacre of Shakahola is not going on.
You should have stood up to challenge her when she was on the floor. Emase?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I join my colleagues to also contribute to this very important matter. Honorable Speaker, when I saw in the newspaper that Kenyans were queuing for free money, I told myself there is no free money. There is nothing like free money. You must always work to earn money. So I noticed that the safety concerns on world coin trading is actually valid. And personally, I want to applaud the Ministry of Interior for what they are doing, for the action they have taken. Honorable Speaker, I happened to have been a guest of DCI yesterday. And while there, I met managers and directors from WorldCoin who had been summoned. So already the Ministry of Interior is carrying out investigation to unravel and to find out what is behind this WorldCoin. Why give people free money? Because there's no free money. Whereas I agree with some members that cryptocurrency trading is the trend now, and it's happening internationally. But that business must be operated under a proper legal framework where there are guidelines, where we are protecting Kenyan traders, and we know that they are safe. So I want to say that already the Budget Committee, we have looked at a bill that has been proposed by one of the members of this House, and we passed it. This member is seeking to establish legislation upon which cryptocurrency trading like WorldCoin will be that would be the platform within which it will be operated. So already there is something, I think that bill will be coming to the floor of this House. So probably whether the money is meant to entice more Kenyans to join the trading, that is something that needs to be investigated, and we need to be told, so that when Kenyans are involved in this business, we know that they are trading in the right business. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable members, I want us to stop here. I want to give the Majority Leader an opportunity to respond. The Majority Leader, I think the concerns of the members who have spoken and those who are eager to speak is the same. Security and safety of our people, and the danger of foreigners coming here and doing things the way we saw, and what you are doing to protect the population of Kenya. Majority Leader, go ahead. Remember, this was just a preliminary statement as I directed, and you should assure the House when the ministers are being brought here by yourself to respond to these concerns.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I'm laughing because there are members who are asking me to donate a minute to them. I don't know whether they will now respond to the issues on my behalf. But Honorable Speaker, truly speaking, Honorable Speaker, it is indeed true that this matter was a matter of grave concern to Kenyans. And even members of Parliament, I must thank Honorable Martha Wangare and Honorable Mukunji for raising this issue before the House. And Honorable Speaker, I have been a meeting with the CS Interior and the Data Commissioner, Madam Immaculate Kasait, this afternoon, and I had a lengthy telephone conversation with the Minister for ICT, the Honorable Eliud Owalo. And just to assure the House and the country that one, this matter is now a matter that is under active investigation, and by a multi-agency team that encompasses the Ministry of Interior, ICT, investigative agencies, and even the financial agencies, financial reporting agencies, to make sure that they are able to establish, one, as Honorable Martha Wangari was asking, how many people in this country. I did see in the news yesterday being reported that this company has collected data from the people's eyes from about 2 million people globally. But we want to know specifically how many Kenyans, and assurances from that multi-agency team as to the safety of that data. As I indicated in this statement, they have assured us that one, the company that was actually collecting this data is not WorldCoin, is a local company by the name Sense Marketing, a marketing company. And some of the issues I've had the Honorable Junet Mohammed, the Honorable Bensouda raise. Indeed, were it not for the quick action of the Minister for Interior and ICT and the Data Commissioner, we will not be where we are. Probably more data would have been collected. And I must also commend, and yesterday I did indicate that the Data Commissioner's cautionary statement was a bit too late, but I have since learned, and is there in this statement, that she indeed gave her cautionary statement a week before this matter came to the public limelight. Therefore, it's not lost on Kenyans that indeed government was on track of what these people are doing. Since last year, the Office of Data Commissioner was on their track since last year. They indeed wanted to start collecting this data last year, but they were not registered, and they were waiting for, I'm told, the launch of their Bitcoin, their cryptocurrency. And when it was launched late last month is when they start collecting this data. And the Office of the Data Commissioner has been on that case, and we must commend them. And it is unfortunate that someone like Bensouda has the kind of views she had on the CS Interior, who swung into action, not just on Shakahola, but what is now being described by the Honorable Junet Mohammed as the new Shakahola in data harvesting. And indeed, the CS Interior, we commend his quick action. As we he has said, and in our meeting this afternoon as he brought this statement, that he wants to assure the country that not just stopping these people from collecting any more data, but also ensuring that all the data they had collected has been seized and is with some of the agencies under the Ministry of ICT being analyzed to also ensure that there is also no data that had been carted away to the cloud. And even that, they are saying they are working on it. But they were very cautionary, Honorable Speaker, that we do not jeopardize the ongoing investigations in whatever we say, and I'm therefore restricted as to the other information that he has confided in me as to what they are doing. But just to give the people of Kenya the highest assurances that whatever data had been collected has now been secured and is in the hands of the investigative agencies. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, to appeal to Kenyans, the Office of the Data Commissioner cautioned Kenyans as to the activities of this company. But as I said yesterday, Honorable Speaker, Kenyans are too eager to collect money from any person for whatever reason. And just to caution Kenyans not to rush to getting money from sources that they do not know. Even people who are engaged in terrorist activities. And Honorable Speaker, is indeed true. If you speak from the north, they will give you harrowing stories of young people, taxi drivers, people who do courier work who have been used and enticed using money. And at times not a lot of money, 5,000, 10,000 shillings, and they end up being entangled in terrorist cell activities, and they get arrested and they end up suffering as terrorists, yet they were probably just enticed with small money. So maybe just to use this opportunity to ask Kenyans to be cautious whenever they get people offering them money, and in the words of the Honorable Mary Emase, that there is no free lunch, there is no free money. Don't exchange anything that is not out of a productive economic activity for cash. It may be detrimental to your well-being in future. With that, Honorable Speaker, the CS, as I indicated, have indicated they are ready anytime to update the House, and I believe through the relevant committees, that of Interior and ICT, they should be able to update the House on the outcome of the investigations. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Majority Leader. I'll expect you to give us a progress report before the close of next week. Yes, Honorable Milemba.
Honorable Speaker, you had earlier indicated, because of the weight of this matter, that the CSS involved be invited in the House, and that the Leader of Majority gives a timeline or dates when that can happen, and that would be very important. But now he ends up by saying that they will just update the House from where they are. I thought your first pronouncement on that matter should prevail, because this is a very weighty matter. I hear these guys are also creating clubs in schools to harvest the eyeballs. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Yeah, Iris, yeah.
Yes, Irene Mayaka. On the same matter.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I'd just like to inform the Leader of Majority that we do not have a committee in this House called the Committee of ICT. It is the Committee of Communication, Information, and Innovation. ICT is just a component of that committee. Thank you.
Honorable Ichungwa.
Honorable Speaker, I stand well informed by the Honorable Irene Mayaka, but Irene Mayaka must understand that being an old member of this House, when we had the Committee of ICT, I am still in that old regime. Now it is a committee, the CII committee. And Honorable Speaker, I've heard what the Honorable Omboko is saying. Probably one of the things we should be telling Kenyans, maybe with artificial intelligence, you never know. Maybe these people could at one point switch off their eyes, and you have to pay to see. Kenyans must be cautious. So we must caution Kenyans with the technology around the world today, Honorable Speaker. You never know. Maybe at one point, your eyes will be switched off from somewhere, and you have to pay to see or pay to read. And you never know, Honorable Speaker. So let's just caution Kenyans wherever we are, even our school children, as Mwalimu Honorable Mboko says. We need to also sensitize our school children. It's unfortunate, Honorable Speaker, that as someone said, there are mothers who are queuing with their babies strapped on their backs, and you never know whether they were capitalizing on you harvest your own iris and that of the child, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Majority Leader, in view of what you are saying and what the members have expressed, I direct you to bring the two ministers to the House on Wednesday at 3 o'clock. On Wednesday at 3 o'clock, and given the weight of the matter, the ministers that you had listed to come and answer questions, that is Minister for Trade and Minister for Defense, you'll shift them to the following week. Yeah, okay.
Honorable Speaker,
you can shift to Trade.
Yes.
do defense.
Defense and
but
these
you'll
two.
start with the ministers for security and ICT to tell the House and the country what they know and what they're doing about this grave matter.
Most obliged.
Honorable members, I acknowledge the following schools in the public gallery, and I think some are in the Speaker's gallery. Longisa Boys from Bomet East Bomet. Karaba Secondary School from Laikipia West Laikipia. Karou Primary School from Tharakanithi. Olenkuya Primary School from Narok West Narok. And Njin Ntunu Primary School from Githunguri, Kiambu. On your behalf and on my own behalf, I welcome the students and their teachers to the House of Parliament. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, inquiry into the maize flour subsidy program for the financial year 2022-2023.
On agriculture,
Thank you,
Mutunga.
Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock on the inquiry of the maize subsidy program for the financial year 2022-2023, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, the 7th of June, 2023. During the consideration of the Supplementary Estimate 1 for the financial year 2022-2023, Honourable Speaker, members of the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock observed that a total of 7.267 billion had been spent on the maize subsidy program, out of which 4 billion shillings had been paid under Article 223 of the Constitution, while the balance, which was 3.267, was yet to be paid and had been presented to the committee for regularization. Honourable Speaker, it is the amount of 4 billion was spent in July 2022 and presented to the committee for regularization through the supplementary estimate as required by Article 223 of the Constitution. The committee did not approve the expenditure on account of non-disclosure of the information on who the maize flour subsidies, maize suppliers were, the quantity of maize flour supplied, the areas in which the subsidized maize flour was supplied, and the retail outlets that sold the maize flour. Honourable Speaker, it was for the above reasons that the committee resolved to conduct an inquiry into the maize flour subsidy program, whose objective were to, number one, find out whether the program achieved its objective. The second one was to establish whether the identification process for the millers was free and fair. And one was to find out if there was value for money in the execution of the entire program. Honourable Speaker, in the experience attributed to prolonged the range of land for farming due to population growth, poor agronomic practices, among others. The country relies on and commerce countries. However, this was not the case in 2022 because there was poor production of maize in the entire region. Honourable Speaker, due to the maize shortage, prices increased from 3,000 shillings per 90 kilogram bag to 3,500 per 90 kilogram bag by April 2022. And between 3,000 to 3,500 shillings per 90 kilogram bag in April 2022 to 4,600 and 5,000 shillings in May 2022. To cushion the consumers from the high prices, the government waived duties and levies on maize imports from countries outside East Africa and commerce region to bridge the gap. Despite this, maize prices continued to rise due to shortage, disruption of in the global supply chain and high fuel prices. A 2-kilogram packet of shifted maize flour, therefore, was retailing at about 190 shillings and 215 shillings that time. The government made a decision to further cushion the consumers through maize flour subsidy program. In May 2022, flour prices skyrocketed to a record high of 210 shillings for a 2-kilogram packet. The government introduced a short-term maize flour subsidy program implemented between 21st of July and the 17th of August 2022. Under the program, the consumers were to purchase a 2-kilogram packet of shifted maize meal at 100 shillings instead of the prevailing 210 shillings in a move that was aimed at making the flour very affordable to most of the Kenyans. Honourable Speaker, in carrying out the inquiry, the committee held meetings with the Cereal Millers Association and the Green Mill Owners Association and the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development. The committee also received written submissions on the program from the National Treasury and Economic Planning and the Office of the Attorney General. The committee observed as follows. From the meetings and submissions, the committee did observe that the program may not have achieved its intended objective of supplying shifted white maize flour to citizens in all parts of the country at a price of 100 shillings. Number one, the Cereal Millers Association submission, in their submission, the committee established that the millers manufactured the white shifted maize flour and supplied it to the wholesalers, who supplied it to the value chain. It was, however, not their responsibility. It was not the responsibility of the millers to find out who the maize flour was sold to, and if it go to the consumers, and that and where it retailed at 100 shillings. On the other hand, the Grain Owners Association has stated that most of their members are small-scale millers that operated in estates and areas close to their residential houses. Due to this, the flour was bought by neighbors and families. Most of it, therefore, was not distributed through the value chains. A multi-agency team comprising of various government agencies was put in place to oversee the program in all stages. However, the team did not provide a report on the areas of coverage of the subsidized maize flour. Shifted maize meal under the program was not stamped subsidy, and this may have reduced the success rate of the program because the flour could have been hoarded by unscrupulous value chain players and sold at higher profit at the end of the program. The second issue that was of concern is whether the process of identification of the millers was free and fair. The committee established that the process was free and fair because of the following. Number one, the Cereal Millers Association and the Green Millers Green Mill Owners Association and the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development informed the committee that the program was open to all millers that are members of the two associations that were willing to participate in this program. Contracts were signed between the millers and the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperatives then. The second issue that we established was that the Grain Mill Owners Association informed the committee that the members of his association signed the contract for supply of shifted maize flour, and thereafter their counterparts in the Grain Mill Owners Association. Scrutiny of the contracts, however, shown that the millers from both associations began signing the contract on 20th of July, and they signed the same contract. On the other hand, the contract submitted by the ministry in their presentation was different from the contract signed by the millers. We established that the contract submitted by the ministry was similar to the one presented to the committee by the Grain Mill Owners Association, while the contract that was signed by the millers was similar to the one presented to the committee by the Office of the Attorney General and the Cereal Millers Association. So we had two contracts. On the land issue, the presentations made by the Green Mill Owners Association was genuine and had no underlying issues, hence the value for money. The presentation made by the Cereal Millers Association had a number of underlying issues and therefore no value for money on their part due to the following reasons. One of the reasons is that the figures of the maize supplied to the program provided by the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Livestock Development and the Cereal Millers Association and the Grain Mill Owners Association were all different. From the ministry, the records show that 3.5 billion was paid to the maize millers and Article 223 of the Constitution for the program. In the meetings, the Cereal Millers Association submitted that they had received or they had been paid 1,905,845,377.07, while the Grain Mill Owners Association stated that they were paid 841,784,292.89, which makes a total of 2.747627,669.96 and not 3.5 billion as stated. On the 4 billion that was paid to the maize millers, 500 million was paid to CMA or the members of the CMA to cater for the interest accrued from the debt owed to the millers for the maize flour subsidy program of the financial year 2017-2018. They had refused to sign the contract for this particular program because they had not been paid the interest accrued to the debts. Neither the ministry nor CMA provided a proper explanation on how the money was distributed to the millers. Despite the undertaking to submit documentation on the same, none has been received by the committee as at the point of writing the report. The amount of money owed to Cereal Millers Association submitted to the committee was different from the amount of money that they were demanding from the ministry. The ministry, from the ministry to pay, as seen from the letters that were attached to their presentations. CMA explained that the figures submitted to the committee had gone up because 2 other millers joined the program later. They, however, did not submit details of the 2 millers. The 5th issue that we established was that during the consideration of the supplementary estimate number 1 of the financial year 2022-23, the committee established that the total amount spent on the maize flour subsidy program was 7,267 million. However, CMA informed the committee that the total amount for the program was 6.6 billion, while the GMOA or the Grain Millers Owners Association stated that the total amount for the program was 6.4 billion. So the 3 figures were different again. There was discrepancy in the amount submitted to the ministry in the ministry's submission and that presented during the supplementary estimate number 1 of the financial year 2022-23. The ministry explained that the figures amounting to 3.267 billion submitted to the during the supplementary estimates had been arrived at before reconciliations were done. The figures were mainly because of repeated invoices. Therefore, the new figure is 3.025 billion, which is outstanding. As such, there were a number of issues that need to be interrogated on the part of the Cereal Millers Association, like the details of the millers that were paid 500 million on the account of interest accrued on the maize flour subsidy for the financial year 2017-2018, and how the money was paid to them. The second issue is the total amount of money owed to the CMA, which was also staggering, which was changing. And then the third issue is the members of the CMA that supplying the maize flour to the subsidy program. The committee will conduct further investigations to table a report with recommendations on the way forward in view of those issues. So the committee therefore makes the following recommendations, Honourable Speaker. From the above observation, the committee does recommend that an amount of about 500 million owed to the members of the Grain Mill Owners Association should be factored in the budgetary estimates for the financial year 2023-2024 and paid because their computations were clear, the membership of the associations that participated in the program were static, and they did not participate in the missed subsidy of 2017-2018, which are the issues. The other issue is that, the other conclusion is that a total amount of 841,784,292.89 that was paid to GMOA, or the Grain Mill Owners Association, under the Article 223 of the Constitution be regularized because the committee established that there was value for money on the association's part. And the final issue is that the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development should come up with a policy on how to engage in future subsidy programs within 3 months of adoption of this of this report, and submit a copy of the same to the committee. Honourable Speaker, I would wish to acknowledge the following in view of their participation in this report. I would like to acknowledge the committee. We are grateful as a committee to the Speaker of the National Assembly and the clerk for the logistical and technical support accorded during our sittings. The committee further wishes to thank the Cereal Millers Association, the Grain Mill Owners Association, to limit the scope of the bill. Allow me to repeat that. The committee further wishes to thank Cereal Millers Association, Grain Mill Owners Association, the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, Office of the Attorney General, and the National Treasury and Economic Planning for making this inquiry successful. Finally, I wish to express my appreciation to the members of the committee and the committee secretariat who made useful contributions towards production and preparation of this report. Honourable Speaker, I wish to call upon the Honourable Member for Soy, the Honourable David Kiplagat, MP for Soy, and also member of the committee to second this report, adoption of the report. I thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wish to second the motion on the maize subsidy and to state to the House that we did the inquiry. We invited all the stakeholders that were involved in the subsidy. As you know, the maize subsidy was a hot issue just before the elections and after the elections. And this government is now focused on production subsidy rather than consumer subsidy. On the inquiry, we found out that there were a lot of challenges that actually will result in questioning whether there was value for money for this subsidy. But further inquiry revealed that the small millers who actually supplied maize, the maize flour, did not know the entire architecture, unlike the large-scale millers. So they were just brought in at the 11th hour, and actually they spent their money in supplying the maize for the subsidy. And looking at the current financial situations for the small millers, they are in dire situation in that they have taken bank loans because the government could not be able to pay them for a long time. That's why the committee came to a conclusion that the small-scale millers were very genuine and they are currently suffering, and we urge this House to approve this report so that that segment of millers who are struggling like any other Kenyan can be paid to a tune of 500 million, the one that is still due to them, so that the ministry doesn't take more time to alleviate their suffering. So we call upon this House to look at the report, to debate the report, and come to the conclusion that the committee came to, that the small-scale millers need to be paid their dues. Now, looking at the big fish the big fish are the large-scale millers. They are the ones that sat with the big bosses. They designed the program, and they executed. And you can imagine the design of the program whereby you have the floor subsidy going for 100 shillings. That's a drop all the way from 200 and 230 then. But there is no label to indicate that this bag is from the maize subsidy. It doesn't have the GOK label. It doesn't have the subsidized label. And what we found out is that the brokers in between and the cartels that are all over in this country managed to benefit, and they might have used now that maize flour. They go and created artificial shortage. And I know most of the members, given that you are also interacting with the public, getting the maize flour then was not a very easy thing, because it disappeared in our shelves. Because these cartels, they were able to take the maize, they store them in their stores, and when the subsidy was stopped suddenly, what happened is now the maize flooded the market, but the millers could not be able to sell the maize because there were a lot of them at the stores of the cartels. So that is why we feel that there needs to be more investigation on what happened to this program, especially. What is out of order?
I would advise that points of order, order members. Points of order nowadays are done through intervention, not through howling at your seat. Yeah. So if I say intervention here, I will be able to then know whether.
Okay. May I proceed?
Whether.
May I proceed? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
What I'm saying.
Order. Don't Boruku. What is out of order?
Mr. Speaker, this is a House of Records, and we were sworn in to oversight on the behalf of Kenyans. And this committee is extremely important committee. And if the member who is seconding, he has talked about cartels. Is he in order to talk about the cartels without mentioning the names so that the people of the Republic of Kenya can be able to understand who are these cartels who have been causing trouble when it comes to the issues of unga. The issues of unga is an extremely pertinent issue, Mr. Speaker. It's an issue which we cannot. It's an issue, actually it's a security.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I am on record.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for coming to my rescue. I think, Honorable Rugu, unless you are not living in Kenya, you know we have cartels in this country, so we don't need to elaborate. But since I cannot substantiate on that, then maybe for the record, I withdraw that statement on the cartels, but kindly note that there are cartels in this country. So may I proceed? Okay, from our report, our report is very clear that for now, the small-scale millers, as we have stated, they were not in the design and the architecture of this program. They were brought in the 11th hour. They were just told to mill maize, and given that they were within our estates and living within the population, they milled the maize, and when they took their product outside, the population took them, and they were able to sell to those who are available within those precincts. But the design of the project of the maize subsidy was that the large-scale millers, there was a whole chain from the cereals, from the provincial administration, from the security apparatus, all those were supposed to card that food chain to ensure that it reached the distributors, it reached the wholesalers, and also it reached the retailers. But for the small scale millers, we are urging this House kindly consider the report and alleviate the suffering that these small millers are being going through, so that their money can be released without further delay. As I finish, there is need for this House to look at Article 223 that the current Treasury are using to approve expenditures that are not within our budget. And looking at those expenditures, some of them might not be emergency expenditures. So I'm calling upon this House, let us also relook at that article and to put caution so that it can only be used when the need arises. Especially, we have noted that as we head towards the election period, there is misuse of Article 223 for government to spend money that has not been voted by this House. So we also call upon, that's what we discovered when we are doing the inquiry, that there is need to card on the utilization of Article 223 by the Treasury officials. Otherwise, I second and I call this House to approve. Thank you.
Thank you, the Honorable David Kiplagat. But before I propose the motion for debate, I wish to recognize the pupils from the following schools: Komotobo Secondary School, Kuria East in Migori County; Kinungi Primary School, Naivasha, from Naivasha in Nakuru County; and Kakenya Center of Excellence from Kilgoris in Narok County; Ntepes Primary School from Samburu East in Samburu County; students from Eburu Secondary School, Gilgil, Nakuru County; and students from Teresia Schools in Gilgil, Nakuru County. They are all welcome to follow the proceedings of the House this afternoon, and we welcome them warmly. Honorable members, I therefore proceed to propose the motion that this House adopt the report of the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock on its inquiry into the maize flour subsidy program for the financial year 2022-2023, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 7th June 2023. The Honorable Robert Mbui.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, as we debate this motion, it's important to remember the purpose behind the introduction of that maize subsidy, because that seems sometimes to be getting lost in the discussions. That because of prolonged droughts last year, towards the end of the year, the government of the day noted that the prices of unga were rising all the way beyond 200 shillings per 2 kilogram packet. And so the government made a decision, which in my opinion was a very, very decent decision, to support the Kenyan public by subsidizing that product, so that the prices were actually targeted to go down to 100 shillings. So the idea was a noble idea. The idea was a brilliant idea, and I think the government was showing that it has a heart, and the government cares for the people of the country. So, Mr. Speaker, the first thing we need to clear is that the idea was good. But, Mr. Speaker, what has happened is that despite a brilliant idea, there is so much agony. There is agony to the people that supplied these maize. In fact, Mr. Speaker, Section 43 of the committee report indicates to us that some of the millers are saying, due to the non-payment, they are suffering, facing closure due to the debt burden. Some of them have lost jobs. There is operational losses. There are broken families, Mr. Speaker, broken families as a result of non-payment. And then, of course, finally, they say that they have reduced faith in government, Mr. Speaker, because they did a deal, a contract with government, and were not paid. And you know, Mr. Speaker, we must make it very clear that government exists in perpetuity. Government does not exist because somebody is in the office of the president. The office of the president can change hands. The leadership of the country in terms of political parties can change hands, but government exists in perpetuity. And these people that supplied had the right to be paid. And I'm happy that finally the committee is also seeing some sense in some of them being paid, although there's still a lot of opaqueness within the whole deal. Mr. Speaker, I sympathize with the committee because the committee actually was trying to squeeze, I think, water out of a rock. Because, Mr. Speaker, they have conflicting details from every organization that came to them. The Ministry of Agriculture, the Cereal Millers Association, the Grain Millers Grain Mill Owners Association, and all of them were giving different figures. And Mr. Speaker, that tells me that there is a problem. It makes me smell a rat in the whole of this deal. Because, Mr. Speaker, Article 10 of the Constitution is very clear about the issue on values and principles of good governance. One of the most important tenets is the issue of transparency and accountability. Mr. Speaker, and also public participation and involvement of the public. Mr. Speaker, there is too much opaqueness in this whole deal that I feel that there are people who are trying to hide information so that they could gain. Mr. Speaker, this matter is a straightforward matter. I mean, Mr. Speaker, look at it this way. The Ministry of Agriculture decided that they will procure maize flour for purposes of bringing down the price. Mr. Speaker, all they needed to tell us is who did they contract, how much was supplied, what was the supply price, what was paid or who was paid, and who has not been paid. But when we come here, it is, CMA are giving a figure, GMOA are giving a figure, the ministry is sometimes almost acting fluid, AFA is also not giving their own figures. Mr. Speaker, it is so unfortunate. And so that tells me that there must be some greed and some corruption that took place within this deal. That clearly must be what has happened, Mr. Speaker, because when you find that there is opaqueness in the information that is being shared, it means somebody somewhere was benefiting and they did not want that to come out. But, Mr. Speaker, it was surprising that the Grain Miller Owners Association, they are saying that when they were supplying, they did not supply to the value chain, so it didn't even end up in the shops. In fact, it is so shocking because I've seen Section 55 says that they were supplying their neighbors. Who are their neighbors? And how was that being accountable? Mr. Speaker, this thing is so unfortunate, but I want to say that the idea was brilliant. If we ever go back to doing some subsidy program, we must think through from the beginning till the end so that we can have some efficiency.
No, I'll allow Honorable Mbui 1 more minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I was saying it's important that as we are dealing with these things, let us find a way that we can slay this dragon called corruption. Mr. Speaker, I think that's basically the bottom line in the whole of this arrangement. Let us deal with corruption. Let us have an effective government dealing with corruption. Let us have an executive that cares for the people so that Kenya can move forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
In listening to the chairman of the committee and the second of the motion, you see or you hear undertones of something wrong done, but you don't see it in the recommendations. This chance goes to Honorable Indikiri Mugambi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was waiting for this report like any other member of parliament, but an issue congratulatory note goes to the chairman of the committee for taking a bold step to start an inquiry, because this issue of subsidy has been used by both political divines. We were looking for explanations about the subsidy because we are told that the unga prices will go down to 100, and we are waiting for it, but we never saw it. When we joined the government, we said we will bring the prices for unga down, which we are doing. But the time has come that we say we call a spade a spade. This is not about the Kenya Kwanza government, it's about Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, the idea which the leader of minority, the whip, is purporting to be was a good idea. To me, I see it as a business decision of an organized criminal element of people who sat together and found out the best way of lying to Kenyan is propagating for introduction of the subsidy. If there is a case study of PhD, is that. And it's very unfortunate that people criticizing the government for corruption, insensitivity, are the same people who perpetuated this program. Very unfortunate indeed. We all know. I will agree there's some data which is missing from this report. But what the committee has done is they looked at the good suppliers and millers and they focused on that. And that's what they are saying we approve. One of the things that the chairman should do is now to give us the list of those good millers to accompany as a detail for the 500 million that they have said we need to pay to those millers. And Mr. Speaker, once that one is done, we'll ask the committee to go back and give us the list of those bad millers they have identified, and so that we can see whether we can blacklist them. I am not going to agree to the fact that some of these millers failed. They stopped manufacturing. Now they are suffering. When they were eating Kenyan money, they were enjoying. This is their time. This is their time to pay back. This is their time to be named. This is their time to be blacklisted. They have to take the consequences. And we should not shy away from that. This government is doing whatever it can do to make sure there is food on the table, fertilizer, etc. Now making sure that the prices of meals have gone down. Those people who conspired with the then government must be brought to book, must be exposed, so that we don't see them with their good labels of so and so manufacturers, but they are the same guys who ate and consumed Kenyan money and produced nothing to go to reducing the cost of unga. Mr. Speaker, we cannot politicize this. And I ask my very good friend, I respect very much, he's my senior. I actually have taken him as my mentor, though directly, because there are certain things that I like, others I don't like. What we are saying is, every time we stand, we should not speak negativity of this government, which has been in power for 8 months. So I agree that there is a deficiency in that report, and the chairman and the committee can give us another report, that which will include what is omitted on this. The list of the manufacturers who are not being paid, the reason why they are not being paid.
I would request that you be patient and wait for your turn. Member for Siaya. Member for Siaya. You want to speak on this?
Thank you for this opportunity. Much as I would have loved to participate in another, contribute to another bill, but I still want to say that the issue of maize is still going on, and it is a big issue. It has never been resolved, but I think that the smaller millers, who's owned by, by the government, over 500 million, should be settled. These are young millers who are struggling, and they are badly off, much as they really want to get involved in agriculture and ensure that they also make their own money, and also to support the country in terms of food security. I think they should be paid, and I will support that. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Member for Seme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to discuss this report with a very heavy heart. Mr. Speaker, a very heavy heart that I cannot support this report. Mr. Speaker, because it is basically on sympathy that the small millers are suffering. But it does not give you the whole context. You get the impression that much more serious things have happened, but you don't see it in the report. We start by saying that these millers supplied the flour to the wholesalers, and it was not their responsibility to know what happened thereafter. Mr. Speaker, it goes on to say that these millers supplied the flour to neighboring families, and they do not know who these neighboring families are. So, Speaker, the report then goes to say there was a multi-agency team comprising of various government agencies that was put in place to oversee the program at all stages. You do not even get to know how this multi-agency was linking with these small millers that we are sympathizing with. It then leaves you that it then tells you that the shifted maize meal was not stamped subsidy, and therefore it gives you the impression that it went into the market and was probably just sold as any other maize meal. What it leaves you with, Mr. Speaker, is that we are paying people the maize that was supposed to be bought by Kenyans were bought at the expensive prices that we are now paying because they should have bought them at lower prices. They did not. So what is our rationale? I think that this report came out prematurely. It should have come with clear details of who did what. I don't want to help some people without knowing who I should punish. I would first of all want to know who to punish for this sin. Then I say, okay, these guys suffered because of these people. But we are left by saying the small millers, I presume this is the grain millers, the Grain Mill Owners Association. And I'm also assuming that the cereal millers association are probably the big ones, because that is what is coming out of the report. So, Mr. Speaker, this report was in the right way, but I think we need to know exactly what happened before we make this payment. This is my view. I know it's painful for me because I'm told that these people are suffering. True, they are suffering. But I'm also very worried that if I'm in a business and there was a lot of issue at this time and I'm milling maize, I'm taking it out. I also live in the same area. I don't go there to see whether anybody is buying the maize I milled at the price I was supposed to mill it at. I can't say I completely didn't know what was happening. So, Mr. Speaker, this report, we need a more detailed report. If it can come quickly so that we really help these small millers that we are saying are suffering, while we know exactly. That's word of cartels. Let's have it and know who these cartels are. These multi-agency teams, let's know who they are and put them to task as we pay these people. But we can't just do a quick job and pay these people without knowing. My fear is that if we do that, there is no more heat, the matter goes. So me, Mr. Speaker, with a very, very heavy heart, I do not support this report. I oppose it.
Thank you. I can't see. I don't follow the list and the members I can't see. The Honorable Cecilia Ngiti of Turkana. I thought I saw her. Member, the Honorable Irene Mayaka. The Honorable Ruku.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this report is done by a member, the chairman. It's a member of our coalition, the Kenya Kwanza Coalition. And Mr. Speaker, I would be very happy to support the report. But Mr. Speaker, I rise to oppose this report. And I want to oppose it with very strong terms, possible. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have a very cardinal responsibility given by the people of Kenya to tell them the truth, but only the truth. And when I listened to the presentation done by the chairman and seconded by a member of the committee, Mr. Speaker, there is too much left out, or even there is more than meet the eye. Mr. Speaker, every departmental committee of this House has the powers, judicial powers, to call anybody and to ask for any evidence possible, so that that evidence can be read, can be tabled in this House, so that the Kenyans can be able to know what is exactly happening within the public sector. The matters UNGA, Mr. Speaker, touches the core of the even security of this nation. We have seen very violent demonstrations done because of the UNGA, not only in this country, but also in other nations in the world. So these are very important matters of the nation which should be investigated by the departmental committee without fear or favor of anything, Mr. Speaker. We cannot rush to conclude that we authorize payment of 1.3 billion Kenyan shilling without us being told, without Kenyans being told, how the entire program of subsidy started, what the companies which were involved, what are the names of those companies, what are the directors of those companies, for how long they have been in operation, and how much the subsidy. If the second of the motion of these reports has talked about cartels, Mr. Speaker, the Departmental Committee of Agriculture has a responsibility bestowed to that committee by the people of Kenya to unearth who are these cartels who are running away with the subsidy money, which is supposed to take care of the poor of this nation. I have not heard anything like that in this report. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I beseech all the members of this House to find the reason to reject this report, to oppose this report. The Committee of Agriculture should go back. And I know the leadership of the committee is an able man. He's an extremely well-educated man who can be able to go to the core of this matter, so that we can have a proper report, probably a report of even 500 pages if need be, so that the truth about the subsidy program can be known. We cannot give Kenyans half-truth. We cannot give Kenyans shoulder work. We have to tell the Kenyans the truth, Mr. Speaker. And if there are people who are culpable, they should face full force of the authority of this House. Because this House is powerful, it has authority, and anybody who did wrong as far as subsidy program is concerned, that person, that company, should be in a position to face full force of the authority of this House. Mr. Speaker, I beg to oppose this report in totality, the way it has been presented in this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The member for Busia. Want to speak on this?
Mr. Speaker, I'm preparing to speak in the next one because we have a report.
The Honorable Sunkuli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to support this report. Mr. Speaker, the maize subsidies actually began much earlier than the very last one that was done, which I think is the subject matter of this report. Originally, the government had wanted to fix the prices of unga at 90 shillings per 2 kg. And at that time, the government imported maize, and the National Cereals and Produce Board sold the maize at 2,300 shillings per 90 kgs. And at that time, the millers were allowed to buy maize at a cheaper price on condition that they sold the maize, the unga, at 90 shillings per 2 kg. Now, at that time, Mr. Speaker, the one thing that the millers were required to do was to write the price of unga on the packet, say 90 kg. And that was complied on. The unga was sold very nicely until the harvest came. And then the free market forces now operated. And unga was sold at 100 shillings, 120, and continued escalating. Towards the last election, the prices of unga started going very high. And in order to bring down the prices, the government implemented a subsidy program. And that subsidy program was given to a few millers. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, these millers were not required to write on the packets the amount of money that they were going to sell, the price of the unga. So the subsidy was given, the unga was lowered in terms of its price, and it went on like that, and the millers had to sign a contract, and they signed an undertaking that they were going to do that, and the government signed an undertaking to pay them. I admit, Mr. Speaker, that there were some respects in which this subsidy was not well conducted, because it was not easy to identify in the market which unga was subsidized and which one was not. But subsidized unga was sold. Now the problem is we have a new government, and the new government is a successor of that government. In fact, a huge component of this government was the former government. Now here in our hands, we have an issue. Should the new government or abrogate the contracts that were made by the other government just because it was not well implemented? The report has pointed out the errors of that day. But the report has also said that the obligations must be met, and that we as a House must factor in the budget the payment of these subsidies. And I see myself that we really have no choice. The Committee of Agriculture, in its wisdom, has seen that we have no choice. Mr. Speaker, let the government pay the subsidies, because the government undertook to pay the subsidies. In future, they should do what they did originally. They should state the price of unga before, and they should make the subsidized unga identifiable in the market. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, this report is good. I support it, and I therefore rest my case now.
Member for Suba South.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Let me start by saying any subsidy program for unga in this country since independence has always been a scandal. Starting with the famous Paul Ngei experience.
Honorable Mutunga, what is out of order?
Even up to the time.
Honorable Mutunga, you seem to be.
I hope they have paused my time.
Go ahead. Seems you don't have the mic. Go ahead, Honorable.
Okay. We've always experienced a national scandal every time we speak of maize importation to subsidize unga in this country. Right from independence, if you remember the saga that involved the late freedom fighter Paul Ngei. Up to the time when I was also chief of staff, I was accused of being engaged in some malfeasance with imported maize. So I took a lot of time to try and understand how this thing works. Mr. Speaker, it is, I think, a short-term measure that is open to abuse to imagine that the government can control price of unga by simply importing maize and giving it to millers to mill and sell. What normally happens is that the procurement processes ever since are never transparent. And there's a curious timing. Maize is always imported either after elections or towards elections. Throughout, if you see all the instances when we've been importing maize. Now, what happens is when you import the maize, and normally it is through National Cereals and Produce Board, and hopefully you give it to maize millers to mill it, the story on importation is normally very clear. It is imported at a certain fixed price, then given to NCPP. But the millers never access it to NCPP at that price because there are intermediaries in between who buy it from NCPP and sell it eventually to the millers. That is where the corruption starts. And Mr. Speaker, why do we want to regulate the price of unga? It's either because the market forces of supply and demand have collapsed and there's not enough maize in the market. I don't think that is an issue that should be addressed by subsidizing the price of unga. It should be addressed by other means so that the prices can be maintained. In my view, the long-term solution to this problem is having what we call strategic grain reserve that should be kept at all times by the government, which is then released to the market whenever there's a shortage, instead of rushing to import maize. And then I think we should also continue developing and deepening the operations of our commodities market to try and create stability in prices of this essential commodity. Now, turning to this report, Mr. Speaker, I would like to oppose it because I don't think it goes deep enough and I don't think it deals with what the key issue is. What worries me most when I read this report is I can clearly see that there was no financial tracing, what we call follow the money. There's not been any attempt to follow the money. If we want to unearth this scandal, the 4 billion that was paid, let us be told when it left IFMIS, it went to A, B, C, D, and let us get the names of those people. The same way, we should also get the full list of the so-called small-scale suppliers of unga, whom we are recommending should be paid 500 million. There is no list. Without knowing who the beneficiaries are, we surely cannot go and interrogate what the underlying contracts are. And either we follow the money or do what is called financial tracing and get to the bottom of this matter. Otherwise, it is so clear that the 4 billion, because we never saw this, we were all in this country, we never saw this cheap unga. Yeah? We don't know where it was, but somebody was paid. So I think the committee should go back and do a forensic audit, or if you don't have the capacity, do what we did during the Grand Coalition. Call PwC or Deloitte and Touche as we did. Let them do the financial tracing for you. on the payments of 4 billion that were made. Let them tell us who received the money. Let us go and audit their books, their industrial production records, and see whether they produced this maize and sold it in the market. And we will get to the bottom of it. So, Mr. Speaker, I oppose. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Member for Mosop. Honorable Mutunga, you will have a chance during your reply. That's a determination on this matter. You will have a chance to reply to all this. So the best thing to do is to take notes. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity that you've given me to comment on this particular motion. I stand here to support this particular report of the committee on this issue of subsidizing the maize millers. Mr. Speaker, the committee took a very long time to investigate on this matter. They sat down, they were able to actually reach out to the parties that were actually involved on this particular matter of subsidy. And after a lengthy report and also doing their own investigation, Mr. Speaker, it is very evident that of course there were deficiencies on this particular issue of subsidy. The contracts that was issued by the ministry was totally different from the contracts, of course, that was signed by the small-scale millers. But that should not be an excuse as to why they should not be paid for providing subsidized maize. So, Mr. Speaker, after reading this report carefully, I've taken quite a bit of time to read through the report of the committee. And I saw the time that they took until they talked to Treasury, they talked to all the stakeholders. And based on this, the multi-agency team comprising of various government agencies were put into place to oversee the program in all the stages. And it says, however, the team did not provide a report on areas of coverage of the subsidy maize flour. Obviously, if the government agencies, multi-agencies were involved in overseeing the program, then they may have failed, but some way, somehow, the maize was distributed to individuals. Some people bought it. There are some areas that says they sold it to small neighborhoods. They may not have used the regular distribution chains. But that is not a reason not to pay the people who supplied the maize. The amount of money owed to CMA submitted to the committee was different from the amount of money that they were demanding the ministry to pay, as seen from the letter that was attached to by the presentation. So the committee took their time. They were able to really be very careful in what they were saying and what they were doing. And I believe this report, Mr. Speaker, that has been brought to us is very genuine, and I support that they should be paid, because nobody should be able to have given their maize and then at the end of the day the government says they were not responsible or they are not going to pay. So the 500 million owed to the members of the Grain Millers Association should be factored into the budget estimate of the financial year 23-24. I do support, and I believe this is a genuine and credible report, and I stand here, Mr. Speaker, to support the report of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member for Kabondo Kasipul.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to also contribute to this motion. Mr. Speaker, there is nothing wrong the world over in giving subsidies. And we have seen countries like the US, the UK, and several others in the developed world giving subsidies to their citizens. Mr. Speaker, from what we had seen, the intentions, the subsidy was given as a measure to cushion the citizens to affordable levels of buying maize flour. Maize, we all know, is the staple diet of the Kenyan people. Mr. Speaker, it appears from the report that some people may have taken advantage to make money out of this subsidy. Mr. Speaker, as I support the report, with a rider that an audit be carried out with full disclosure
on who did what. Mr. Speaker, as it is, the report is inconclusive, and I urge the committee to just put in a little bit of meat, just a little bit more, and we finalize on this matter. Those who genuinely supplied should not be victimized. They should be paid for the services that they rendered. Thank you very much. Once again, I support, but with the rider of an audit on full disclosure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Member for Turkana East.
Honorable Speaker, I rise to read the motion of adjournment.
Order, member. I thought the chance was to you to contribute on the motion. So what do you want to do? The motion for adjournment is for 5:30, not now yet.
영준 신부님 시신 명예훼손한 거, 구영서 후배 죽이고 그 가족들까지 위협한 거
제발 부탁 들어주십시오. 아들이기 때문에 안 들어주는 거야. 노인네가 진짜 감히 지금 누굴...
Tulimwona vizuri na hata nilimwona kwa nikahakikisha nimemwona kwa sababu akiongea kuna jino haikuwa ni yeye, ni huyo hapa. Alisema anaitwa Conductor Mapoha.
What? Msichana sema ukweli ndio uachiliwe.
Hata hizi ziko huko kando zimengoka ndio hizo.
What do you mean? Ushaikuwa nini kulipishana pesa hapo hivyo kwa kadi?
Aje sasa kwani ni makanga?
Na uwezi kuwa makanga, si ndio? Very good. So ni kielelekani umeleta hapa kwa hii koti.
Ati kelele? Chunga maneno yako.
Sasa unajua hii mambo yote hawa watu wananiwekelea mheshimiwa. Manake sijawahi fanya kitu kama hii mheshimiwa. How shall you close me? How shall you?
Close, are you a door to be closed or a boot?
By the way. Lakini mheshimiwa ungeniangalia tu hapo.